All right. So now what I want to do is make it work. So I'm gonna go back to our code. So here, I ran the code and JUnit failed. So JUnit's going to run, this little window will pop up on Eclipse, and you click over here, and when you click on the specific test, it tells you what the fail is. There's sometimes going to be a lot of tests here. And so if you want to see the error message, I think you can double click here, or you can mouse over, yeah, you can double click there, and you can see this is what it was expecting, this is what showed up. Run before coding. Why did run before coding show up? Because that's what it said right here. This is what it was expecting to see. Um, this doesn't necessarily tell you the line number of where the code went wrong. If you double click this, it'll take you to the line in the test that went wrong, which you can't change the test to make it pass. That's, you see my name up here. That's not your code to edit. Anything with my name up here, I'm going to have my copy of it on Gradescope. If you fix it here, it's not going to fix it on Gradescope. The only thing you get to submit is the thing that says your name here. But what this is expecting here is it's saying, okay, well, the input that I send you, the one right here, which is this code right here, plus a space, plus the helper text. So the helper, if I go back to here, is some code that I wrote for you that you're going to use. My helper here basically takes something from the tester and it returns it to you as a helper file. You see, when it has my name on here, you shouldn't be editing this file. You don't need to submit it either. You submit it, it gets ignored. I only care about the one file that has the ledger that goes with it. That's the only file I copy over for the vast majority of the assignments. So how do you make this work? Well, any way you want to. You debug it. You can use the debugger, you can use print lines, wherever you want to. So it's certainly not supposed to say run before coding, but it's good advice. Run before coding. But once I have run it and I have my ledger going, then I can start coding. And so I can say, well, I want this to be cannot change me. All right, so let me run this. Well, it's not passing yet, which, by the way, once I've run sample test one time, if I'm not on something that has a main method or is a test, it'll run the same thing over and over and over again. So when you move on to your next project, if it's running the test from the one you just did, all you have to do is go click on the new test and run that. A little reminder there. But now you can see it says, okay, well, there's a lot of text here. I'm just going to double click it to see. Make sure your ledger is legit. Well, that matches. But what I'm missing here is the second part. Your version of helpers are ignored. But the great thing I did here is I'm inching towards daylight. This is a great coding strategy and also one that makes your ledger look more legitimate. When you just copy and paste lines of code that suddenly work one after the other, one method after the other, they work, or there's just nothing substantive that changes, it shows that you're just kind of being a transcriptionist, not a coder. You're just trying to take in somebody else's exercise. And you don't want to do that. You want to be a good coder, so work on it and get rewarded for that. If you have questions, ask somebody else to help you with your code. Look at your code, or ask me. I love to help people with code. But here, I want to add in. I'm taking this plus, well, this helper, right? That's what my solution here is. I say provided dot. I am just a helper, right? So nothing you have to edit there, just a helper. But sometimes they give you classes that you're going to use to help or create instance of or whatever. In this case, my starter code, my test code, gives you the helper you're supposed to work with. You cannot change this code at all. If you change this code and say, I want to add in a Boolean here, X, well, all of a sudden, the test case doesn't pass. You can modify the test case, but you haven't modified my test case on Gradescope. So this will break and not compile when you go to Gradescope. So don't change this, right? If I provided something, leave it be. Especially the interfaces. You can't change this method either. I can't add something else there. If you make the tester, break, that means you can't do it. Anything inside of it, you can. That's totally fine. But so see, I put this out there. None of this would have modified my ledger, by the way. Only when the unit test runs does my ledger update. So I don't check your compiler errors. I don't check every little thing. I'm not scanning your computer. I'm just updating every time you run it. It grabs a copy of your code. All right, so I still am failing. What's going on here? All right, so make sure your ledger is legit. Your version is, oh, okay. So there's supposed to be a space between it. You can see it's actually highlighting it for me. It's pretty nice right there. Very helpful. So there's supposed to be a space there. That's easy. Quote, oops, quote, space, quote, plus provider. Run it again. I passed. So now I've happily passed my test. I'm ready to go. I should go back to my cover sheet and say, okay, well, I spent 0.25. I already predicted I was going to spend 15 minutes, and I write down some lessons now that I have it working. Nothing too long in this case. I mean, you don't spend 20 minutes for an assignment that takes you 10, 15, you know, but if you spend hours on it, it's probably worth spending 5 minutes to go and reflect on what you did. All right, so I've got it here. Let's go back to Gradescope. I'm going to resubmit it now. You're allowed to and encouraged to resubmit like crazy. I'm going to add my cover sheet. It's actually kind of required to. I don't want partial solutions. I want full solutions. I want you to act like a professional and get your code working at all costs, but not cheat. All right, so I'm uploading that. It's going to go off and run. The biggest thing here, as this waiting for this to upload, is I want to trust that you want to learn. I'm trying to set up a system where you're allowed to ask your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your neighbor, your person who sits next with you, somebody in class for help. And when they give you the help, I want to see that line by line. And so when you submit, you can see now, well, I only did it 4 times, but it took me 13 minutes those 4 times. And I only changed one line of code because there's only one to fix. But I can see that line of code changing multiple times. So I ran it one time and it took me 10 minutes to go through and do the submission and everything else. And then two and a half, then I made a line change. Then 2 minutes, 11 seconds later, I made a line change. And 34 seconds later, I solved my problem. So on my side, if I saw something like this, it'd be a little bit fishy. Not for this assignment, but for a lot of them. When you're changing one line of code at a time, you know, over long periods of time, it's a little bit fishy. So what I can do, if I need to, if I feel suspicious, I can actually look at every single version of your code. And what some people foolishly do is they copy the whole thing out there and then they just add and delete a line over and over and over again, make the ledger look good. And it's just like, why are you spending an hour and a half trying to make it look like you did the work rather than just doing the work? I understand at the end maybe it's tough, and I've seen people try and bounce back and forth, and they have ledgers where these times overlap. But the important thing about these times is they should overlap the people you're working with. They should show the code that you're changing in a meaningful way. Something that actually looks like code. It's going to fail a test and get closer and have a print line to help you debug and then take that print line out later on and all those sorts of things. And that's perfectly okay. What's not okay is starting with somebody else's code and just incrementally adding it. That's actually kind of easy to detect, as I hope you can see through this process. Now, I'm trying to keep this process as painless as possible. I think within a few assignments, you'll forget about it. It's just be, oh yeah, copy over 2 files. But the important thing is if you're working on multiple machines, you have to take your ledger with you. You have to copy that ledger over. Use either sharing tools like Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox, or just simply be disciplined and copy all the files over when you're moving things. It's not hard because you need the whole project as well. Um, so just keep up good practices, and you'll work with integrity, and then you'll have no troubles with academic honesty at the end of class.